Whether on whitewater or flatwater, kayaking is a good way to experience the outdoors. Coming up, we'll show you a few ways to explore Georgia by kayak and meet some folks with a passion for these paddle-powered vessels. Next on Georgia Outdoors.
Funding for Georgia Outdoors has been made possible by a grant from Mary Hall Singleton and by the Imlay Foundation.
Developed by the Inuit culture more than 1,000 years ago, the kayak has held a long, indelible attraction for outdoor adventurers. Whether the exciting rush of taking on a rapid or the quiet serenity of navigating backwater creeks, the art of kayaking draws enthusiasts from all walks of life. When given the task of producing a program on kayaking, the Outdoors crew jumped at the chance to learn a little about the sport themselves. On a cool day in October, our production team, Brandon Arnold, Andrew Marshall, and Lauren Baker, took on the challenge of learning the basics of whitewater kayaking.
Working on an outdoor show, some of us had never had the chance to go kayaking before. We always sort of stand behind the camera, watching other people have all the fun. So we thought we'd give ourselves a chance to learn it and maybe put those skills into use later on down the road professionally, but also have a little bit of fun.
The crew enlisted Bruce Williams of the Whitewater Learning Center of Georgia to be their teacher and set out to become master whitewater kayakers. Knowledge of the equipment and how to use it is essential for safe whitewater kayaking, and Bruce wasted no time sharing his impressive knowledge with the crew.
Well, I learned all about the different parts of the kayak and, what you need to look for if you're buying a kayak, what clothes you need, what equipment you need in order to be prepared. Does that seem a little better?
Oh, that's perfect.
But before they tackled the rapids, the crew had to brave the flat but icy waters of Lake Ackworth.
All right, let's go back to the boats. I demonstrated how to get out of the boat properly when it turns upside down, how to put on the spray skirt, how to take it off, and then we practiced that. Hey, it's got it.
We'll see about underwater.
You need to be able to get out of the boat when it turns over. And I'd say when it turns over, not if it turns over, because that's part of whitewater kayaking. Okay, that looks good. That's very good.
Once the fundamentals were covered on dry land, the adventurous crew headed into the water. Did we mention it was early October?
Ready, set, go.
The first thing we did was learn how to exit the kayak. Should we tip over, go upside down? That was relatively easy. Just managed to stay calm.
Then we got into the paddle strokes. I talked a little bit about balance and control of the boat with your body. We went through the basic stroke repertoire, how to make the boat turn, how to make it go in a straight line, and some variations on those different themes.
It was a little more challenging than I thought because I'm used to paddling a canoe and I've done that a lot with the show. It's more stable and it's a little more intuitive. But I think I was starting to get it there at the end.
But the true test of the day came in learning the Eskimo roll, a move for riding an overturned kayak while occupying it. As the crew learned, the Eskimo roll is not an easy thing to master.
We had varying degrees of success with that today.
I discovered that I don't really like being underwater.
Something's wrong here.
The rolls were more difficult than I thought they were going to be for me.
newfound skills at hand, the Georgia Outdoors crew prepared to tackle the raging, turbulent, bone-jarring Class 2 rapids of the Upper Chattahoochee.
I'm really excited. I'm hoping I don't have to do the Eskimo roll, though, because that was one thing I just wasn't very successful at, but I can't wait to test out my new skills on the Chattahoochee.
Today, I think I'm just going to try not to fall over and fall out of my boat.
The Class 2 rapids on the Upper Chattahoochee, small as they were, still provided quite a challenge to the crew. It's a good thing they had a good teacher along with them.
It does require some skills, and it's a good idea if you're going to do whitewater kayaking that you do have some instruction, not just rent a boat and jump out on the river. It's not all intuitive. It takes a good instructor to help you learn. And that makes it fun. If you're out there turning over and swimming all the time, it's not much fun.
In fact, the crew did quite a bit of turning over and even a little swimming, and it was very exciting. We'd love to show it to you, but unfortunately we can't, because not long after we began our whitewater adventure, the camera got wet. But enough about the novices. One group of Atlantans paddles this same beautiful stretch of the Chattahoochee River on a regular basis. The group is organized by Richard Grove, a local kayaker known for his month-long paddles to the coast.
It's kind of a really funny story. I was just challenged by a nephew who had a kayak and he didn't paddle other than one time, and I asked him if he would let me borrow the kayak to make a trip. He said sure and asked me how far I was going, and I said, well, maybe I'll paddle to the Gulf of Mexico. I planned some meals and took off. It was more of an experience than you ever imagined.
Returning from his trip with a full-fledged love of kayaking, Richard found a group of like-minded people and began planning weekly outings.
After I started paddling, newspapers would post my name, maybe my phone number or my email address. People started calling me and everybody wanted to go paddling. So I said, well, let's go paddle here. And then somebody else would call me and say, well, I'd like to go paddling. First there was one, then there was two. Now I have a group of about 59.
He's an inspiration for a lot of us. I probably wouldn't be paddling without Richard. I've called him my mentor a number of times. He's got all the excitement, the experience. You know, he's a great organizer.
It's kind of Richard and a flock of really happy kayakers, and it's fantastic. I'm really happy to found them.
Although the group paddles flatwater kayaks, they're not above running some low-intensity whitewater every now and then.
We started at Morgan Falls Dam, came down to Pace's Mill, and it takes us through some slow stretches of water and through the Palisades, which there's a little bit of whitewater and a little bit of splashing, which is a lot more fun.
The Chattahoochee is often underestimated as a source of recreation and enjoyment for Atlantans.
I'll talk to people about paddling and they'll, where on earth do you go paddling? Right here, Chattahoochee? You paddle that? Is that safe? Actually, yeah, it's not bad at all. You'd be surprised. And it is, it's right here. You can go on the spur of the moment, just an hour or two, and you've got to paddle in for the day. It's like checking out of the city.
I am constantly flooded with phone calls and emails about people who've lived in Atlanta for 25 and 30 years and never paddled on the river, and it's like, well, let's go paddle. Call me.
Enjoy the nature. I appreciate it more as I get older. The people that I've met, the things that I do, it's a new challenge. It's something new that I've learned, and those things are some of the bigger things that I've enjoyed about paddling.
When you get in a boat and you get on the river, you're a paddler. No more, no less. I don't care if you're in a $5,000 kayak or if you're in a $600 kayak. You're still a paddler. Look at the people that we were with today. 10 people having a great time on the river. And that's what it's all about.
The kayak is truly a boat with variety. From sea to stream, flat water to whitewater, there's a kayak to fit every occasion. But what if you feel like paddling something other than a store-bought boat? Alan Sinkfield is a wooden kayak builder based out of Atlanta.
It's a pretty long process to get interested in building boats. Worked in cabinet shops, really enjoyed working with the wood. When I got close to college age, I got really interested in kayaking. From that, I ended up merging the two together and deciding that I wanted to build kayaks on a regular basis. The process in building a wooden boat is like anything else that you're going to build. You need a good foundation, and for a foundation we build a plywood beam. You can pretty much put a house on. These things are pretty solid. They don't shift on you. Because what you don't want is for your boat to twist while you're trying to build it. Then we take forms. The forms are the inside shape of the hull. And what we're going to do is we're going to wrap the wood strip by strip around the forms.
Alan uses a process called stripping to assemble his sleek and beautiful creations. The strips are specially milled so they fit together perfectly.
Each of these strips is rounded on one side and cupped on the other. So when you're building these, generally you have the cup side facing up. You run your bead of glue into that cup. The next piece nests down inside there and it gives you a really good joint.
Although almost any kind of wood can be used to build a kayak, most builders, including Alan, prefer cedar.
It's very, very light, but it's a very good building material for this because it doesn't compress.
Once these thin but strong strips have been attached to the forms, Alan moves on to the next step of the process.
Once we get those glued together, the next step is to come in, scrape off any of the excess glue, sand them down, use what's called a fairing board to smooth out any humps or bumps, and then put fiberglass on the outside. Once you get the fiberglass on the outside, all the colors of the wood shine through and you can really tell how the finished boat's going to look.
It's this crucial layer of fiberglass that gives wooden kayaks their true strength and beauty.
At that point, your boat looks like it's going to look when it's done. It's fiberglass, the wood is shining, and go sailing.
For Alan, the joys of kayak building come in both the process and the end result.
The most rewarding thing about building kayaks is seeing somebody when you get one finished, because people generally don't know what to expect. But then when you get done and you bring it out, there's a look on their face. It's hard to believe this is theirs.
Of course, the final reward comes in the very act of paddling a kayak built with one's own hands.
The thing I enjoy the most about kayaking is being able to just go out and explore places that may be close to home that people aren't even aware are there. And a lot of times people don't realize some of the things that are just right around the corner.
A day on the water can be a lot of fun, but it's important to think about safety before picking up your paddle. Wear a personal flotation device, or PFD. If you do capsize, this will keep your head above water. To avoid hypothermia, dress for the water temperature. Use your spray skirt and wear wet or dry suits when appropriate. If paddling in whitewater or surf, always wear a helmet to prevent head injury. Most importantly, avoid paddling alone. Even with all of the proper safety equipment, it is best to have a friend with you in case of emergency. For more information, visit this website.
While some adventurers seek out the adrenaline rush of navigating whitewater rivers from the cockpit of a kayak, others seek a different kind of adventure. One of the best ways to explore the quiet beauty of our riverine and coastal ecosystems is from the serene vantage point a kayak offers. From the nooks and crannies of our rivers to the tidal creeks of our coastal salt marsh, a paddler's perspective affords the opportunity to view wildlife closely and absorb the splendor of Georgia's natural waterways. Sea kayaks are specially designed for just this purpose.
Many folks, when they talk about sea kayaking, infer to themselves that they're going to be out in the ocean, going right off the beach out into some massive waves or something like that. To me, it's somewhat of a misnomer because sea kayaking, we're using kayaks that can be used in any body of water that's flat. So I consider them more touring kayaks that will more efficiently get you from point A to point B. Down here in coastal Georgia, we have over 2,000 miles of tidal shoreline with a dozen or so rivers coming down into the coast. So within an hour of anywhere on the coast, there's limitless possibilities for exploration.
Though sea kayaking is very different from whitewater, it does require a similar set of skills. Since the crew tackled the whitewater thrills of the Chattahoochee, we decided to send Brandon and Lauren from the Georgia Outdoors team to do some kayaking of a different type.
We're going to start off by choosing the right clothing.
We met up with Nigel Law, co-owner of Savannah Canoe and Kayak, to participate in one of his beginner courses and get a few pointers.
First thing and the most important thing is really to put people at ease, to get them to relax. A lot of people are trying something for the first time. They've got a lot of ideas that might not be true about the sport, and they might be a little bit fearful. A big part of that first class is really geared all around that. And all of a sudden, bang 3 times.
Like whitewater kayaking, one of the first things you need to know is how to escape your boat should you capsize.
When you come out of the kayak, you have to maintain contact with your kayak. The whole premise of sea kayaking is that you're self-sufficient, you're self-dependent. You never really want to be in a position where you need outside help. All the exercises we do are really to get people comfortable when they do capsize. It's not the end of the world. Their life isn't over. By some good technique and some good practice, we can empty out our kayak, we can climb back in it, and we can continue on our way. I want you to roll the boat and then capsize it, and you're going to tuck.
As we learned with our whitewater experience, there's no better way to learn the proper exit technique than to get in the water and do it.
We did learn the wet exits, which, you know, are always kind of exciting to be under the water for a few seconds there. And Nigel made it really easy to do.
Rock and roll.
Savannah resident Colum Acuff is taking the class with Nigel to sharpen his kayaking skills.
Until you kind of get comfortable with being upside down or getting out of the kayak underwater, it's really tough to really reach out and improve in kayaking techniques.
In addition to basic paddling exercises, Nigel has the group do a few stunts to get acquainted with the boat.
Nigel had us do a couple of exercises that were a little bit silly, but they helped me gain my confidence in the water and with my kayak and get more comfortable with the gear. One of the things we had to do was crawl out onto the bow of our boat and kiss the kayak. And it wasn't so hard getting out there, but getting back into my seat was a little more difficult.
You know, when people first get in a kayak, it's a very narrow craft and it does feel like it is going to rock and roll and capsize quite easily. So I like to use the kayak stunts, kind of starts to build up your confidence in the boat.
Instruction is a big part of what Nigel does, but the real thrill is getting out on the water to explore what the waterways of the Georgia coast have to offer.
This is Rick, John, Brandon, and Lauren.
Lauren and Brandon from the Outdoors crew met up with Nigel and a group of coastal kayakers to explore the tidal creeks of Little Tybee Island.
The trick to a successful kayak trip is to not go too far. A lot of people have a tendency to overestimate their ability to paddle a distance and forget about the fact that there's going to be wind is going to crop up, the weather's going to change, the tide's going to change.
After a short paddle across the water, the group reaches the edge of Little Tybee's expansive salt marsh. With almost 7,000 total acres, including marsh, Little Tybee is actually more than twice the size of Tybee Island, and it's a great day trip for anyone wanting to experience the Georgia coast from a kayak. Nigel points out some of the finer points of marsh ecology along the way.
One of the reasons that's kept me here, I would say, it's just a beautiful thing to have on our doorstep. It's due to organizations like the Nature Conservancy that places like that are still around for us to enjoy. Little Tybee at one time was very much under danger from a lot of terrible things. Back in the 70s, the Nature Conservancy stepped in and through some donations from some very good citizens was able to buy it. So we now have this state recreation area, which is just a blessing.
Little Tybee is beautiful. Being out in the marsh is just incredible. This is my first time actually being out in a salt marsh.
I've never been to Little Tybee and definitely had never seen these marsh areas from a kayak.
I suppose it's the solitude and the peacefulness that's so attractive. You know, you're out there and there's no one out there at all. You're just out there with the wildlife and the quiet and the water and the birds. It's just gorgeous, especially on a day like today when it's so pretty.
paddling is one of the best ways to get a view of one of Georgia's unique ecosystems, the salt marsh.
Salt marsh is a unique biological system that is flooded twice daily by a mix of salt and fresh waters, generally, to form an estuarine environment. The marshes are frequently overlooked and considered just part of the landscape, and people really don't focus on marshland as being anything but just a big, wide open green area. And the marsh supports a wide variety of life forms throughout the year. It's the true nursery of the Georgia coast.
Indeed, because of the plentiful food sources and rich nutrient waters, the salt marsh is a great place to enjoy saltwater fishing. And a good way to fish the marsh is atop a kayak. We met up with kayak fishing enthusiasts Rob Van Wee and Chris Woodward for some kayak fishing on the salt marsh.
Today we're directly west of Jekyll Island, right across the Jekyll River in the marsh. When the tide floods, usually you can start fishing in here if it's over 7 foot. I'm gonna start off with kind of a greenish color.
Greenish, okay.
Today, they're fishing for red drum. Also known as redfish or channel bass, red drum is a popular game fish found in shallow coastal waters along the Atlantic and Gulf coasts.
The redfish come up in here on a high tide, as long as the tide's at least 7 feet. They'll come up in here to hunt and eat crabs and other crustaceans and fishes and such. The redfish is probably one of my favorite fish. It's a beautiful bronze color when it's in this kind of setting in the marsh versus the beach.
For many anglers, the low cost is what initially drew them to the sport.
Been living on the coast about 30 years. One time I wanted to get out in the water and fish more in a boat, but at the time I didn't really have the funds for getting a boat, so I decided, I'll get a kayak.
I started to kayak fish when I lived in Central Florida, and it was more because I wanted to be on the water and I wasn't really making enough money to buy an outboard powered boat. So I thought, well, I'll try a kayak, and it's so peaceful, so quiet.
Some kayaks are designed specifically with fishing in mind.
My boat is an Emotion kayak, sit-on-top style. The model is a Mojo Angler, so it's designed specifically for fishing out of a kayak. It's equipped with kind of a lot of standard kayak features, obviously a hatch, foot pedals. It also has a removable console that I can put my GPS in. It has a rod holder up here, so I can have a rod facing forward and 2 rods facing aft if I really want to. I don't have to twist my body around and take the rod out of the holder from behind me. This also comes with a paddle ledge on it right here, and fasten it in and it will stay on that ledge right there. So that's a great kayak thing to have if you're fishing.
For anglers that don't need all the bells and whistles, or for those that like a more customized boat, it's easy to take a do-it-yourself approach.
I just got the basic boat, no frills, and then I slowly started adding pieces to it. First thing I did is I put a couple rod holders in the back. In the front of my boat, being a fly fisherman, you don't want things to snag up on, when you're casting. So I use this. It's just a, pool noodle with a dowel in it, taped it up, and just kind of figured out where I wanted it in the boat. So drop that in there. Got your place for your pegs. Also, instead of having a bilge pump or a bucket, just a big car sponge. Works great.
One reason to choose a kayak designed for fishing over a canoe or a sit-in kayak is the wind.
Graduated from a sit-in kayak, then I went to a canoe because I could stand up in the canoe batter and push pole. But I noticed it was a little bit different with the wind, a little slight breeze of the canoe, and you were gone like a sail.
The key to fishing in still marsh waters is stealth. Without a motor, a kayak can move silently through the water without startling fish.
I think the main advantage to having a kayak is the stealth. You're super quiet, you come right up on them, it doesn't displace a lot of water. And I don't like to throw anchors out or push or anything into the ground because I feel like when you do that, they feel it. It seems like their senses are more amplified.
I'm making too much splashing noise?
Of course, it takes more than a quiet kayak to catch fish.
There's going to be some more right over here. I just heard one splash. I guess technique, more or less, is trying to decide which way the fish is going and casting in front of them, not too close but not too far away. You have to think about your shadow a lot of times, because your shadow, if they're coming towards you and your shadow's towards them and they hit that shadow, they know right away they're gone.
Finding a fish to hook is only the first part of the challenge.
All right. They fight very hard. They like to take the bait and then try to stand on their nose and try to get that hook out of their mouth. So you get a good fight out of them. And here especially, I mean, you've got to be very careful about what they might, wrap you on. They're very smart fish. They know where all the nooks and crannies are, and they know how to get rid of you.
Nice one.
Catching a fish can be exciting, but the real reward is being able to experience the tranquility of nature in a unique environment.
The marsh is insular. You don't hear a whole lot of noises. You're really in contact with the environment a whole lot more than you are in a larger boat. You can actually hear the redfish flip. You can hear splashes and things like that, so you really can experience sight, sound, feel, everything when you're here.
Whether you're angling for the big catch, navigating exciting whitewater rivers, or simply basking in the splendor of Georgia's waterways, kayaking can be a rewarding and fun way to explore our state and get a little exercise in the process.
Funding for Georgia Outdoors has been made possible by a grant from Mary Hall Singleton and by the Imlay Foundation.